I would like to acknowledge that I am coming from the unceded territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam peoples. I am actually residing right now more in the Tsleil-Waututh territory and in Burnaby. And so our campus does sit on the Musqueam unceded territory, UBC there. So I just want to make that acknowledgement, saying that that is where we are. And if you want to do the next, do you have the slide deck, Mark? And I think what I would like to do at this time is actually do a round of introductions so we know who's here. And in case, so why don't we start with a introduction? Let's start with Vicki at the top. She's the one I've got at my top. And then Vicki, if you can bounce it to the next individual, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Vicki Demansky, and I work in the Professional Development and Community Engagement program, which provides support for the Master of Indigenous Education. I am one of a team that will be providing support for the program. My colleague, David Roy, will be your main support person, but I will also be available to provide support.
I don't want to put you on the spot. So the way that the program is set up, because we understand that you're all working professionals, you're all engaged in community, we really try to create a supporting infrastructure that surrounds you and enables you to handle, let's just say, the intense bureaucracy of UBC in a way that doesn't afflict or affect your life. And so Vicki, for example, the senior program assistant, deals with course registration, with any kinds of concerns you have about tuition. And so there's a one-stop person, and this would be David Roy, actually, when he's available, to help you with any kind of administrative questions that you have. My role is to problem solve and support the administrative team and the delivery of the program. I help scheduling and organizing events and set up the instructors and the people that will be supporting you, as well as additional writing intensives and so on. But basically my job is to support Verna. And so Verna is really the boss here. And then Rebecca Jules is named here, works with the Faculty of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies. And just as a footnote to the significance of her role, she's just been tremendous in supporting Indigenous students and creating extra programs of support for graduate students across the university. You need to understand that when you are admitted in fact, you're admitted to the Faculty of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies. And so Rebecca is a very important partner in our support of this program. I will also say that Joaquin Munoz, who's not able to be with us today, but if you want to see him, he'll be at the next information session. We have an advisor, an academic advisor, an Indigenous academic advisor set up for each cohort, and he will be the academic advisor for your group. Dr. Billy Minabariat is the academic advisor currently for the 2023 cohort, and both Joaquin and Verna were advisors for the first intake in 2022. And it's a very important role because they help you with all of your academic questions, what electives you should take, how your program's lining up. They're great for checking in about your research interests and also your what your academic goals are. So a quick summary of this slide, but does anyone have any questions at this point? We will have lots of time for questions at the end as well, but sometimes if you'd like to type your questions into the chat as we go, then we can pick them up as we're talking. And as Verna is speaking, I'll be reading the chat questions and can bring them forward. And sorry, Vicki, to put you on the spot, but could you now flip to the next slide?
Okay, so our program overview is we have the program is structured around having a deeper understanding of Indigenous knowledges, histories, worldviews in both theory and practice. It's we strengthen our instruction and leadership skills by using and supporting Indigenous education knowledge, practice, and pedagogies for the classroom, schools, and community-based programs and settings. So one of the things that we talk a lot about in our program, the Indigenous-based programs do a lot of group work, a lot of collaborative learning as opposed to competitive learning. So that is an Indigenous system that we have utilized in the past, in the past cohorts, and will continue to do. So it's more around using Indigenous teaching methods. You analyze and adapt existing curriculum frameworks and structures in order to make them more culturally responsive to Indigenous worldviews and Indigenous knowledge systems. We provide leadership in the development and revisions of Indigenous educational policy, curricula, and programming, and develop knowledge and practice for engagement with Indigenous learners, people, and communities for advancement in the TRC and UNDRIP commitments. And so that's our program objectives of the IMED. The program is ideal for teachers, administrators, community educators, early childhood educators. And I heard someone say, I'm just an early childhood educator. Early childhood educators are the first people that our little ones get to meet in an educational setting. So I think you have a really important role there. Other professionals who wish to enhance their knowledge and professional practice in Indigenous education. And we have a website there where you can go to and for more information if you want to continue to review that. Thanks, Vicki. Do you move to the next one? So you will be our MEd and Masters in Indigenous Ed Cohort 3. Starting July 2024. The program is 2.5 years part-time. We have a delivery blended model. So in the summers in July, that usually the first or the second week and third week in July, we will have programs on campus. We normally start our first cohort class is a Indigenous pedagogy class that I teach, and it's delivered in July on campus. It's structured so that we get to know each other. We start to model and blend our cohort together. And it's an overview of Indigenous educations and understandings. And so that happens in July. This year, we are also going to be adding a couple of other courses that will allow for those that are in the other cohorts to pick up a elective or two if they need to. So we're trying to structure this more as a prescribed program because we had such a hard time with students trying to identify what kind of electives they had in the past. So this time we're looking at prescribed electives. So
Vicki, could you just show the schedule so that people can see where the electives happen and how the program is structured? I think that would be helpful. It just makes sense for supporting what Verna has just said. And can that be magnified a bit so people can read it? And
yeah, I have old eyes. I couldn't see it. Oh, perfect. Okay. So these are the courses that you will be taking. So you'll have in July 2023, you will do EDST 591, which is Indigenous Epistemologies and Curriculum. September is an online course that you will do, the Indigeneity, Technology and Education 521. And Research Methods in January, Education 500, which is normally one I did. I teach as well. And that just, I have to rely on Mark to see if I'm still teaching that one in the January of 2025. So we also have July, August, which is an elective. And when you come on campus, that's when you will be able to take your elective. with one of the courses. So the idea around supporting elective development with UBC is that we will have summer intercessions, which are 1 week based courses with visiting professors and or UBC professors of Indigenous content that will allow you to take those courses and not have to worry about looking at other institutions to fulfill your electives. And then in July, we will have the Theories and Dimensions, which is EDCP 532. That's one of the other courses that we will be doing. Then you have July 2024, you will have another elective available. And then September 2024, you have the Indigenous Inquiry and Research, EDST 545. And then January, Indigenous Storytelling and Education and Research. And then May, June of 2025, you will have another elective. So you have 3 electives in this program that you are required to take. And then in July 2025 is your capstone projects, which is the end of your program, I believe.
And just to add that the elective for the May-June period is likely to be Dr. Munoz's Indigenous curriculum course that he developed.
Right.
But to speak to those folks with a health background, the number of elective spaces can actually play as an advantage to you because you could pick up health-oriented elective courses in consultation with your academic advisor.
Okay, there we go. So admission requirements, you have an 4-year undergrad degree, a B+ range, around 76% at UBC or in all senior course levels, or at your course or your degree granting institution. A B- range is 68% with a combination with a combined 4-year undergraduate degree plus a B.Ed. And then special cases, we do have special cases for lower GPAs. The 2-year teaching equivalent, 2 years full-time teaching experience or equivalent combination of engagements within schools, community centers, non-governmental organizations, and other education-oriented environments. Please note, in cases where applicants have also completed graduate level courses, coursework toward a master's or doctoral level program, or as an unclassified student, this coursework is assessed separately. A considerably higher standing may be required because of the competitive demand. So Roy is David Roy is the person that you need to be very connected with when you're developing your course work, and especially around electives. He can help you with what electives are available, where we can get it. We also have what's called the Western Dean's Agreement. And if you've taken courses in other areas or in other provinces, those courses are assessed. The transcripts are assessed within David's purview, and then we will either agree or disagree or assign credit to those courses for you to take. And so that would help you build your credentials with UBC. Did I miss anything, Mark?
No, but I think I'd like to say 2 things. One is that we can let Vicky speak to the admission stuff because that's her extra area of expertise. But the second thing I'd like to say is on that last sentence, a considerably higher standing. The higher standing isn't necessarily grade point average. And I'd just like to say what has made applications competitive, because we've had many more applicants for the program than we've had positions the last 3 go-rounds, is just how much community engagement people have, how much history and involvement with directly with Indigenous learners or Indigenous communities and advancing Indigenous education has been really important. And I can't stress enough how this program is really about extending and advancing Indigenous learning and education everywhere. And so people who are really engaged in that process whether Indigenous or non-Indigenous, have found that's been important for their application review. And so I urge you, if you have a deep experience, as many of you have already expressed, in Indigenous education, make sure that's clear in your application.
Vicki, is there anything that you would like to just highlight or add to that, to the admissions requirement?
One thing I might say is, we mentioned the special cases for a lower GPA. Things happen and people do often, it's not uncommon for someone to have a lower GPA in their bachelor. They may have higher degrees, higher grades in their future coursework, or have a lot of experience in things that make up for that. So addressing that in your statement of intent, if there are circumstances that contributed to it, will help us make a special case for you, because often graduate studies who will make the final determination, they want to know what makes this, we need to make a rationale. So I think that in addition to what Mark has just said, like if there is something about your application that may not quite meet the requirements, talk about it, express, what the circumstances were, and that will help us, I think, making that case. So shall I continue on with the next slide? Okay, great. So if for international applicants, I'm not sure how many we likely have in this program, but to meet the English language requirement, you need to have completed a 4-year degree at an institution where English is the primary language of instruction, and that's campus-wide, not just the program you're in. So if you did take a program where English is not the primary language, other than Quebec, attending a French university within Canada actually meets the language requirement. You don't have to do anything to meet the English language. But for those who don't meet it, you need to take an English proficiency test. It must have been taken within the last 24 months. Graduate Studies website has have the link that we have showing here, which has the list of requirements. There are a number of different tests that they accept, and there's certain minimum requirements. IELTS and TOEFL are the two most common. If you have any questions and aren't sure, please feel free to reach out to Dave or myself at the email address that we had at the beginning, and we'll have that again in a few slides. So there'll be some supporting documents you'll need to provide in your application. First, your transcripts. We need transcripts for all post-secondary institutions you attended, even if you only took 1 or 2 transfer credits. You're going to scan the copies of your original documents, both the front and back, and upload it to your transcript. At the time you are offered admission and accept admission, you'll then actually need to send the originals, have the originals sent to UBC from your institutions. So you're going to have your first copy. It can be your own personal copy. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to order a new copy unless you don't have a copy of your transcripts, but you can upload those, just a scanned copy for the admissions purposes. And then after admission, UBC wants to have the official copies in hard copy or a secure electronic delivery. Many institutions will send them electronically to UBC as well. You'll also need 3 references, either academic or professional. Many people maybe haven't been in school for a while. You might not have a recent academic reference. So, you can do all academic or all professional depending, but a mixture is recommended. And there should be people who could speak to your ability to, to be successful in a graduate degree and your interest in Indigenous education. Just to be clear, professional usually is somebody who's been in a supervisory role. So manager, could be a vice principal or principal if you're working in a school, or, other things.
Vicki, can I just jump in here for just a second? And Verna, I'm looking at you just for corroboration of this, but I would note after the admissions processes, the last 3 go-rounds, that band leadership, community leadership references have been very significantly considered. And so These references, if you have band leadership, please include those. And also, if you're in a school district, if you're working with a district principal responsible for Indigenous education, that sort of reference or recommendation has been highly rated and ranked. Again, we're looking for people who can speak to your engagement with Indigenous education and Indigenous students learning.
Correct.
I see a question from Amanda asking how far back you can go for an academic reference. I don't think there's any limit, really. If you have a connection with an instructor or advisor that goes back a few years, that is willing, is willing to be able to speak, I don't think that we have a limit to that. And yes, they can be UBC faculty. Certainly, people have done undergraduate degrees or coursework at UBC before they apply for the program. And I don't think there'd be any issues with one of those. I mean, presumably it shouldn't be somebody who's on the admissions committee. But other than that, I don't think there's any issue with that. One thing is you don't provide the reference. When you submit your application, your referees will automatically be contacted by UBC with instructions on how they should submit the reference. They'll normally submit it on an online portal, but if their only email address they have is one of the free public emails like Gmail, Hotmail, etc., then Grad Studies won't accept those through the online portal. Those will be given instructions on how to mail the reference into UBC. The next part of your application is your CV or resume. It should include all of your academic history, any work experience, any relevant community work you've done, connections, presentations, conferences, all those kind of things. And then a statement of intent, 600 words, indicating your Indigenous education experience, your professional goals, what you see the benefit of the involvement in the program. A lot of what you all talked about earlier, really. And this is, I think, as Mark has sort of indicated, a very important part of your application, just to give that, speak to what the program is going to mean to you, really.
And Vicky, if you could just go back to that slide.
Mm-hmm.
Quite often, I think people read that last phrase, the anticipated benefit of involvement, as being what is the personal benefit for you? And that's important, but people often also add, what's the anticipated benefit of your involvement for your community or for the community you serve? And it's it's actually a simple turn, but it gives the admissions committee a good understanding of what you think the impact is going to be of what you're about, because we really want to make a difference for the learners that you work with.
Nora's made a comment. What is your idea of advancing Indigenous education? Could you speak to that, Mark or Verna?
Well, my idea of advancing Indigenous education is if you're in a school district and you sit on the Indigenous Strategic Planning Committee or the Indigenous Education Committee that looks at systemic change within your organization or your school district. Another one is curriculum development. Have you adapted curriculum in your school or your program or your classroom that enhances the Indigenous epistemologies and ontologies of Indigenous ways of knowing, and that you have incorporated that into your classroom? That is enhancing, Indigenous education. Another one might be, have you worked in an area of policy development, and have you changed policy? Have you been involved with the changing of policy? So those are areas of what we would consider advancing Indigenous education.
All right, thank you. So your application procedure. Applying online, you're going to go to the application, the online application. We have the link here, and you're going to search for MIE3 or Indigenous education. You want to make sure you've selected the July 2024 intake, and then that'll bring you into the application. There's areas where you're going to complete text where you're going to fill in your personal information, your academic history, and all of those things. You can upload your supporting documents, what you have at the beginning, but you can actually hit submit and upload those last documents later if you need to. The application deadline is typically just the application itself when you hit submit, and then there's a further documentation deadline. And let me just double check what those dates are, because I don't have them on this particular slide. Okay, so we have February 15th is the application deadline. It's usually a week or so later for the documents. I don't have that specific date listed here, but I'll make sure that it gets added to the website because that is important information. Dave may have it in a future slide, so we'll take a look. Oh, okay, it is right here. February 22nd is, so basically you have a week. So once you hit submit and you've got your introductory stuff, at that point, your referees will receive their notice to provide their references, and you will have, and your referees will have until midnight on February 22nd to get all those documents entered into the system. Now, sometimes there can be circumstances where you can't get something in. If you're having a difficulty with, or if a referee is having a difficulty, please reach out to us so we can try to accommodate that, or see if sometimes we have to use an alternate email address for somebody, because some school districts just don't receive the emails from UBC. I think we're on the spam list and they just don't go through. So if you think that there's going to be any difficulties with getting any of your documents in time, reach out to us so we can work it out. Your application fee, domestic 112, international 168.25, and those are payable at the time you hit submit. So costs for taking the program, I'm sure that's all of very interest. So the total estimate currently is $16,388.88 for domestic. That's based on current tuition. Every year, tuition goes up slightly, usually May 1st. It's around 2 to 3%, depending on what Senate puts forward. Your tuition for this program is paid over 7 installments. That is the minimum installments. It'll be paid every, now it says May, but actually your first installment would be July, because that's the term that you're going to actually start your program. So it would be July, September, January for the first year, and then it'll start May, September, January for the rest of the program. And it's 7 installments at the amounts listed here. So for domestic, 23.41 and 28. The thing to keep in mind is sometimes a student may end up needing to take a leave of absence, perhaps a medical leave or professional leave, or maybe parental leave, and you might end up missing a term and make up that course in the following term. So you take 2 courses in the following term. If that happens, and it may mean that you're actually only complete the program in 6 terms instead of 7 terms, because you don't pay tuition during leave of absence, you still would have to pay that 7th installment at the end of the program. So it's just something to keep in mind, that you know, that it is a minimum of 7. Now, sometimes students don't complete in time and might go for an 8th term. Then you would still pay tuition at that point, but I believe it's a reduced amount, a continuing fee, which, but I would have to, we'd have to confirm that if it should happen. So tuition does not include student fees. You can expect student fees to be somewhere in the range of $800–900 a year, but there are some fees that you can opt out of. For example, the UPass is the transit pass which is a mandatory requirement for students in the Lower Mainland. And then there's medical and dental fees. If you already have coverage through an employer, you can opt out of that as well. The thing to keep in mind for UPass is if you are outside the Lower Mainland, you need to apply every term to opt out. And during terms when you're actually attending at UBC campus, so in your July or May to August terms, you will actually have to pay the UPass during those terms, unfortunately, because you're actually physically here taking classes. So just something to keep in mind, that you will have a little bump up on those summer terms. So, David Roy, lovely picture of Dave here, is going to be your main support contact. His phone number, the office phone number is here. There is a toll-free number for those who are out of town, and pdce.edu.c@ubc.ca is our main office email address. If Dave happens to be away for whatever reason, one of our team will be able to respond and assist. And yeah, so Dave, but Dave he'll be your main contact. He'll be taking care of registering you into your classes every term. You will not have to register yourself. We'll take care of that for you. If you have any transfer credits that need to be handled, if you have a leave of absence, if you have any issues, reach out to Dave or to our PDC email address, and we'll be happy to assist you. I see a question from Heather. In the August term, is there housing available? I believe that there have been arrangements for housing in the past, but I can't speak specifically to that. So that's something you could email Dave about when it gets closer to the time. And I'm sure that he would be reaching out with that information to everybody who would be coming anyways. And is there cost for books? Some courses have textbooks. I don't know how many for this particular program have textbooks, but
I can speak to that, Vicki.
Sure.
And thank you so much for standing in for David today, Vicki, and for giving us an overview. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get in touch with David Roy at the email address. If you have any questions about administration, he will certainly help with guiding your application process and give you access or identify who else you might need to talk to if you have significant issues. I'll speak to two things, but before I speak to those issues around accommodation, Verna, I just wanted to turn to you about band support. And sometimes the students are coming in with tuition waivers or tuition support from bands, and perhaps you could speak to that a bit.
Several communities have funding available for master's students, and you need to check with your community to find out what your eligibility is for that area. Also, there is the New Relationship Trust that supports graduate programming, and I can't remember when their deadline is, but go online and find that New Relationship Trust, or NRT, and then you can go through that process. There is also sometimes for your community, if you're working for a school or you're working for a band, sometimes they will help support in professional development. So check with your organization to see if that's available to you. If it is not, you also have the access agencies in your territories that will help support professional development.
Just one thing related to funding, if I can. This is considered a part-time program, and that can affect eligibility for some types of funding. So a standard government student loan, for example, is not eligible for this program is not eligible for, but there are other funding options, which may be. So it's definitely something to look into.
And to make that even more complicated, sometimes the band has a particular definition that would say that this is a full-time program.
Yes.
And so that the program qualifies for band funding, but it wouldn't qualify for government funding. And we often have to write letters to the band to just describe the program so that they recognize that it meets expectations and requirements. Mm-hmm. So don't give up, persist if you've got a possibility of that kind of funding, because it often requires that kind of pushing. Yep.
Sorry, this is where Rebecca Jules is very important to you. She may also have a lead on funding and assist you.
I have a question, the direct message from Damien Duffy about UBC tuition waiver, and I don't know what he's referring to. Damien, could you just clarify what you're asking about? Because I'm not aware of a tuition waiver that would be applicable.
Sure, for UBC staff tuition waiver.
Oh, if you happen to be, yes, if you're UBC staff, in general, tuition waivers, I don't think apply to graduate level courses. So you would need to check the UBC HR website and clarify for whatever your employee group is, to see whether you're eligible and how much it would be. Like sometimes there's limits on the amounts. Like myself as a staff, I can only do undergraduate courses. I can do 6 credits per year. But yeah, it would depend on what your employer group is, and whether it includes graduate or not. I think they may have made some changes, and some graduate courses might be covered. I don't know about the MEd program though.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
With regard to accommodations, what we have done in the past is put out a call for anyone who wants UBC accommodation during the 1-week intensive in July. And then we try to get a group rate with UBC conferences and accommodations. And that typically has resulted in, we've had 15 or 20 people, and there's been a kind of a shared accommodation where I think the rate's been something like $60 a night, or something like that, which for Vancouver is quite a bit lower than you'd expect. But there are other levels of accommodation if you want suites or something like that. But again, UBC tends to have cheaper rates as long as we know in advance that you'll need accommodation. We start talking about that in February. Okay. Okay, any other questions? Verna, I'm aware of time. You've got to teach in a few minutes. Rose, you have your hand up.
Hi, yeah, I just had a couple of questions that came up throughout that presentation. The first one is you spoke of the high demand for this program now, and I'm wondering how many seats are available and roughly how many people apply? How many applications do you get? Like, how competitive is this program? Is it going to be like a difficult to get into, or is there a chance, or how inundated are you with applications?
A chance, of course, there's a chance. The last go round, I think we had 45 applications for 25 spots. And that was last year's intake. The opening program, there were 75 applications. And so the first time we offered the program, and so we opened up 2 cohorts, and we had 45 admitted for the 2 programs, for the 2 cohorts.
Oh, so you will do that if there's enough of it, if you're inundated with applications.
Yep.
The other question I had too, in terms of the payment schedule, is it possible to do that? Like, do you have to break it up into those 7? Or like, say I know I have lots of funding this year, but maybe next year I won't as much. Can I do like put credit on my account or something? Do you have options like that for payment, or do you even do it all at once? Is that an option?
Vicky?
Well, I mean, I don't think UBC is going to turn you down if you overpay. The issue is, you're not going to be getting interest on it. It'll be sitting, like, you could certainly pay extra and have it sitting there. So like, you could pay your full year ahead of time if you wanted to. But again, there's those increases that will happen every May, and we won't know. There's only so far ahead that we'll know what the new amounts are.
I would recommend that you get in touch with David Roy and just talk and let him research what that would mean, to make sure that the university would be able to process that and how we would support you in that. It's a very interesting question, and it's not one that I think I've got experience with.
I just wasn't sure. I mean, I'd wait till I was accepted, obviously, before this became an issue, but I'd like to know if that's an option in advance, because previously doing UBC courses, that wasn't an option. So I just wasn't to check for a master's program. Okay, thanks.
When I was doing my EDD, I had a sponsor that sponsored $50,000 for my tuition, and they paid it all up front, and the university just took that money as each semester came up and applied that money to my semester until it was done, till the money was gone. And then I had to pay, I think, not much more, but then I was responsible for my own. So but like Vicky says, they're very clear that they do not pay interest on that. And I didn't care about that. I just had somebody to pay my tuition.
Okay. Other questions?
Sorry, I had one more question. This is
Yeah,
Rose
Rose.
again.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've been teaching 19 years. I've done numerous post-secondary education courses through various universities, from MOOC ones to institutions that no longer exist, like BC Open University, which is now Thompson Rivers University. So getting the transcripts for that might be very difficult. Is there like some way I can explain that and get either an extension, because it'll take me a long time to track down all of my post-secondary education, let alone
Yeah.
the official transcripts for those, considering a lot of the institutions no longer exist.
Again, that will be David Roy. He'll help you with that. And he will identify, like for the MOOC, you won't need to present a transcript.
Okay.
But for credit courses, we definitely want a transcript. And so he'll help with that. And Vicky, you had
Yeah,
something to say?
usually what'll happen is grad studies, so you'd be expected to upload the scanned copies. So if you have your own transcripts, that's fine. For things where you've done one-offs where they're not transfer credits, like if you took like 2 courses at SFU on some random topic, they're not likely going to require those for the final copies, the end, like the official copies. It's mostly your main degrees, your basis of admission degrees. So like if you took a certificate, like a 15 credit certificate at Langara, and you did your main degree at SFU, they're going to want the SFU transcript, like the final ones after admission, but they probably won't want the Langara or any miscellaneous ones. But in your initial application, the expectation is that, yeah, you provide your entire academic history for credit. Like anything you did is non-credit, they don't care about, like the MOOC and etc. But
no,
yeah.
I was thinking, sorry, I should have been clarifying that, and I will talk to
Mhm.
David about it. I'm referring specifically to Indigenous credits that I've received through different courses I've done online. Like right now, I'm in the middle of doing 4 seasons of Indigenous education, and it's a year-long program. But I won't have transcripts for that at the end because it's considered a program, a course. It's not a certificate program. It's not a degree program. Like that's what I was actually inquiring about. But I can do that through David too as well. So thank you.
Yeah.
Verna, I think that we've reached a place where the questions have become very particular to each individual. And so I'd like to give everyone just another minute if there's a question generally that everyone would benefit from, and then we can wrap things up. And those people who have individual questions can stay on, and I'll be happy to answer questions and sort of follow you whichever pathway you need answered. Okay. So are there any other general questions? Any? I don't see anything in the chat. Any questions? So great, everyone. I thank you so much for coming today. I hope that you'll all apply and that you've got sufficient information. I just want to say that we always take the time to introduce you to each other because the collaborative experience is essential to the program. And who you are together is enormously important. And so the people that you've met today would be the people, your companions in a very significant learning journey. And I just thank you all for giving us your attention and your interest. We look forward to hearing from you.